Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with a creator request, which is where a smaller band gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their work. I got an email said, "Hey, Bryan, I'm Thorsten, the guitarist of the German metal band Call It Tragedy. You've reacted to one of my band's videos about 2 years ago, and all my bandmates absolutely loved your review. We recently released a new single video, and as a songwriter, it's one of my strongest works so far, I think. We also invited another guitarist, Urs Wagner, for a guest solo. Have a great day, Thurston from Call It Tragedy." So I did go back and check this out. It actually wasn't 2 years ago. It was about a year and 3 months, give or take. But definitely it has been a while since we've checked them out. I gave myself a bit of a refresher, and yeah, I'm ready for this. They have dual vocalists, layered vocals, harshes and cleans, metalcore, breakdowns, killer riffs. Let's see what they're bringing to the table today. The track is Heart of Stone, featuring Urs Wagner. Some interesting 8-bit chirping in there. Tons of energy right out the gate. Halftime in it. Really like those layered harshes there. Tons of energy with those offbeat strikes in the drums. New section under our second verse. Keeping a lot of movement on the guitars right here. Not shifting pitches much, but putting a ton of attacks in here to keep that forward momentum. Atonality for increased tension. Half step rising there at the end. Nice touch. I liked hearing the variations in the vocals, the harsh vocalist too. Has 2 or 3 different pitches. Seems real comfortable laying into. Yeah, so we did the halftime in the first half of this final chorus. So for our change up, we can't cut it in half again. So we have these vocalizations in the backgrounds. Yeah. I mean, that's just some solid, upbeat, post-hardcore, metalcore mashup there. I'd even say that the chorus even leans a little bit into pop punk, especially with the melodic flow in the vocals, the drumming style, even the chord progression shifts away from some of that darker metal stuff uh, towards brighter pop punk ideas. Even though the music, I mean, the lyrics, we'll have to touch on the lyrics later. I only picked up a few lines here and there. I don't know if I want to color the emotional resonance of all of the lyrics quite yet. I don't think I have a big enough picture of it, complete enough picture. But I mean, let's get into some music here because I thoroughly enjoy that. Call It Tragedy is 2 for 2 for me, and I think they're already in my list of things to check out. But if not, I'm making a note. I'm gonna have to add them if they aren't already because this is right up my alley. I love this stuff. All right, so we have a really interesting opening in which we hyper utilize one side. I think it was the left side that was getting most of the volume with intermittent sound coming out of the other side. I can't remember which side was which though, but the idea was that it felt very one sided, and occasionally we got a full sound and then it was lopsided, and then a full sound and lopsided, but it was very, like I said, intermittent. It also introduced us to a heavily compressed version of the intro riff that we're going to be getting into in a second. It's a really nice way to take the listener from zero, assuming that they just got done listening to no music and the volume around them is ambient, just room sound. Nice way to bring them into the max volume of the song. There's not a lot of volume dynamics at play here, even though it is a bit quieter than everything else. The peaks are still the same peaks as they are throughout the track. We come into our opening verse. We have the heavy vocals. We have a really nice guitar riff. Plays around with both melodic dexterity and rhythmic ideas. It doesn't push too hard against that 4/4 pulse that we're getting from the drummer, but it does play a little bit around with it. It's not really going into anything proggy or djenty, but it's enough to add a little bit of spice. Uh, what else was from there we go into the well, actually we have a nice pre-chorus idea where we get a nice dropout of most of the instruments so they can come in pretty hard at the chorus. The drums pick up their pop punk idea. We shift vocalists. We get these really nice clean lines over top. And what's really cool here, and we'll touch on the we'll touch on it right now. The second half of this, we cut to halftime, and it allows this section to feel weightier. I'm going to assume so the lyrics have a bit more impact. But what's cool is that one of the guitars, maybe both of the guitars, they have slowed down how often they're changing the pitch, but they haven't slowed down how often they're picking. So we're actually getting, I think, 2 attacks per note, per pitch here, which allows the section to still have the forward momentum. It doesn't feel like it drags, but it does feel like it takes on weight. Really nice choice there. From here we go into a second verse, which we have a drastic change up. It starts out bass heavy, bass exclusive, I think. And then we bring in the other guitars, but it's a brand new riff. I think this was a similar thing I praised them on last time we checked them out. Second verse just having a completely different musical concept to it. Similar ideas, similar structure, different execution. Love it. I'm a huge fan of variation. If you're going to make me listen to something multiple times, change it up. There's obviously times to break that rule. If you want, like your chorus to have a nice catch to it, to be catchy, to have a hook, you definitely don't want changes every chorus. But much like we'll explore here, if you're going to do a chorus 3 times, change it up, make it bigger, and they do. Anyways, I love the variation here. Um, we move into the bridge, which is actually a combination of like 3 sections. It's really nice evolution where we take many of the ideas we've heard in both our verse and our chorus so far and explore them in a multitude of ways. We end up bringing both of our vocalists together. They sing over each other, providing counterpoint at times. They also do call and response. We continue on with some of those faster riffs with the rhythmic ideas, the odd rhythmic ideas in them. Different riffs entirely, but same concept. Nice melodic flow, rhythmic juxtaposition. We explore new sounds of that. We also have a miniature breakdown in here where we get to explore a static line in most of the instrumentation. But our vocalist, our harsh vocalist, comes in with like 2 or 3 different pitches, which we haven't really heard much of so far into the track. The vocalist pretty much has that one pitch and stays on it. Pretty typical for this type of music. And harsh vocals in general, honestly, death metal, I think has this same quality. I was going to call it a problem, and it certainly isn't one of my favorite aspects of harsh vocals, but it's not a problem, it's a quality of the style. A lot of vocalists find that comfortable range, and that's just what they do all the time. And I like how this vocalist found a couple of different pitches to create some sonic variety in their harshes. We also got to hear the clean vocalist belt out a scream, which was a nice change of pace. I'm looking forward to some moment in the future where we get a scream, where we get the layered harsh vocals between the two of them. Because we do hear some layered harshes here with our harsh vocalist. I think it was the lead in to a verse. And the vocals got isolated for a beat or two, and you could hear that there was a higher and lower one in there to kind of widen the sound out a little bit. But I look forward to both of the vocalists throwing down um, some harshes and getting a nice high versus a mid, and the different textures between the two. Because our clean vocalist has a bit of a thinner but pointier type of harsh. It just cuts through all the noise, whereas our main vocalist is very wide and beefy. It has a lot of power to it. And I think the two of them together is going to sound phenomenal. I can't wait to hear that in some future track. Um, we get a really nice transition out of the bridge into our final chorus by way of utilizing um, one of the riffs that we're going to hear in that final chorus, and bringing this really nice transition of starting with it and then modifying it slowly until it becomes what we hear in the chorus. And here we get our second variation of the track where our final chorus starts out in halftime, and at the halfway point, instead of cutting to halftime since we're already there, we get some nice vocalizations in the background for these beautiful harmonies. So, that is an overview of the track, of what I heard listening to it for a first time. What all is going on in here, though? We have variation all over the place. I think the second chorus is the only time we ever hear something played word for word, note for note, beat for beat. Everything else is modified in some way or another, whether it's a minor variation, a major variation, an adaptation, taking the concepts, the blueprints of something, but executing it differently. Every other section, every other riff, every other drum pattern is varied, where every section has a unique stamp to it. And I really love that about them. It is what I think is probably their strongest suit, um, and what's going to set them apart from a lot of the other metalcore out there. I think this is metalcore, anyways. I could be wrong. Like I said, it also kind of feels post-hardcore in some sections. I think there's a little bit of a crossover there, but it could just be influences seeping in with like a metalcore bass, but post-hardcore and pop punk, um, you know, there's some influences from there that kind of work into it. I don't know, genres are something I'm weak at anyways. I'm not worrying too much about it. So, but yeah, the variation. And it's not even just the variation of idea, it's also the variation of textures, right? So the riffs are different, the drum patterns are different, whatever. The instruments all sound the same throughout the most of the track, right? Wrong. So, our intro plays around with compression and placement of sounds. Our vocals are constantly changing. We have that airy mixed head and chest voice. Yeah, the mixed head chest voice. And in the first half of the chorus, and then we have more of a full-bodied, higher range voice delivery. In the second half, we have the multiple vocal styles coming out of our harsh vocalist. We have a lot of the song is guitar centric. I had a tough time hearing the bass in a lot of places, so I'm going to chalk that up to me. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention to it. But I know in the second verse when it came through, it was loud and powerful. So we had more of a treble focus, or I said like a mid-range focus in our first verse and chorus, and then a bass focus in our second verse. So, I mean, there's tons of areas where the listener is getting to hear different things, a variety of sounds throughout the track as well. And like I said, I think it is their strong suit. What really separates them apart from everything else. I also really love the push towards that pop punk sound in the chorus. I think if people are coming to this band for their metalcore sound, their heavier stuff, the harshes with the sick riffage to it, I think some people might be a little disappointed and find the chorus to swing too far in the other direction. I mean, I know metalcore does this. A lot of metalcore is pairing softer and heavier. That's what a lot of it's doing these days. But I really love this drastic swing because you guys kind of hide some of the edge. And so you get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to have that fun, upbeat, brighter sound coming from your guitars and especially the drums, really pushing that energy forward. But when you cut it to halftime, you can still hear the guitars pushing the song forward with that energy. And so it doesn't necessarily have the metal bite to it anymore, but it does have some of that metal energy still residing underneath the poppier haze that sits on top of it at that point. And it's just a really nice middle point where the production comes in and helps obscure some sections to allow the properties to seep through without the sonic qualities. It's just a very neat combination of sounds there. And speaking of the production, this whole thing is produced phenomenally. So we got a mixed and mastered by Christoph Kemp. Yeah, shout out. I feel like I've shouted out that name before, actually. Um, yeah, I mean that dude's just beautifully mixed this. Everything about the engineering here is fantastic. Um, like I said, the riffage is good, drum patterns are good, variety's good. I guess the last thing I just want to touch on, just specifically because they were featured, is the guitar solo. I enjoyed it. I don't think there was anything in there that blew my mind. It's a really nice combination of old school shredding with new school sounds. Nothing quite as far as, say, like Polyphia or something, but definitely incorporating some of that newer Zoomer guitar work in there alongside the straight shred. And at least to me, it's a really nice middle point. I'm still kind of warming up to Zoomer guitar work. It is interesting. It blows my mind that people are doing it, but I have a tough time connecting with it. And I think that stuff like this is going to help me slowly get there by giving me that gap of saying this is the stuff you're used to. We're going to work in a little of that stuff you're not. And I can kind of take baby steps with it. But I thought the flow of it worked really well too, which I think is really important to guitar solos and melody writing in general, is finding a story. in your melody. And while most of this is faster playing, which makes sense given the tempo and especially the drum pattern at the time, there is a nice bit of flow to it. A couple pauses, not necessarily hard stops, but just a moment when you're not playing, what, 16th notes, I think, and maybe you play an eighth note. And so there's just a little bit of that breath before moving into that wild, slidey thing going on. I don't know what to call it. Um, just a very modern sound. But yeah, the overall flow of it's really nice. Speaking of weird sounds, real quick before I hit the lyrics, is at the very beginning, there was some chip tune chirping going on in the guitars. I never heard it again. I'm pretty sure it was only in the intro. I'm going to assume it was something to do with the guitar tones, the pedals you had going on. It was interesting. I'm glad it stuck right there and wasn't carried over to the rest of the track. But it's an interesting way to get me involved, especially well, I should say especially me involved, but probably most people too. Is I'm listening like, okay, here's our intro. I kind of get the idea here, and I'm anticipating what's coming. Right, you have this slowly opening up riff. I figure when we get into the riff proper, it's just going to be, less compressed. It's going to be a very full sound. So I'm like, okay, I kind of know what's coming up. And then this chirping comes in. I'm like, what is that? And now I'm engaged with it. I'm like, what is this sound? I got to figure out what's going on here. Let me listen to timbre. Let me listen to sound, instrumentation, texture. You've got me hooked right here at the beginning. Um, so yeah, there was a couple of interesting sounds throughout here, and I'm always a fan of that. If I can't place a sound, I'm immediately intrigued. So let's hit some lyrics here, and then we'll wrap this up. So lyrically, this is a breakup song, particularly for the person who has been wronged in a toxic relationship. I think the chorus pretty much lands the thesis statement. Why can't you see what you've done to me? You commit your crimes so recklessly. The memories still hurt. I wish I could burn every single thought of you in me. The opening verse also leans into a lot of these similar ideas. Another night of believing I failed, another night being consumed by guilt, together but disconnected. Another sign our story has ended, but I've had enough of your hell and your toxic ways that make me feel like I'm losing myself. So it's a relationship that isn't healthy for our narrator, and in our opening lines, we find out that have been gaslit. It seems that they might have brought these issues up before, but they have been told and have been led to understand that it's actually their fault that the relationship is bad, or their fault that they feel uh, unrepresented or have no control over the relationship, or any of these other negative aspects about spending time with another person. And that's pretty much what the whole song leans into is this relationship sucks. This is why you're not a good person for me to be around. And the worst part is you don't get it. And that's pretty much what the whole thing can be summed up into. Something that I really appreciate, though, is that for such a short song, and for as little amount of sections in it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus song. It's like almost every other mainstream track out there in that regard. The structure is very standard. There are a lot of lyrics in here, and I'm not just talking about a lot of stanzas. I'm talking about a lot of new lyrics. There is very little copy paste going on here at all. And much like the idea of the music having a lot of variation in it, I really appreciate that the lyricist goes for maximum impact, that certain lines need to be emphasized through repetition, but that most of the time they're singing should be presenting new ideas for the story. And, just like musical variation, I'm a huge fan of that. Even if I think there's a lot of ground being retread here, the gist of the lyrics are picked up by the first verse, and I don't think there's anything that came in later that shifted my perspective at all or provided new context. I'm sure some of the details are important to the lyricist, especially if this is based off of personal events or something like that. But for the most part, it's a lot of retreading ground. Like I mentioned, it can be summed up into pretty much 4 lines, like I just did earlier. Um, but the idea is, I mean, it does a great job of painting a picture of just how trapped and defeated and, unseen this person is. So, I mean, I can't really fault it for treading the same ground often because honestly, the whole song, most songs can be summed up into just a couple of sentences. It's what they're about, especially when you're sub 10 minutes. Even some 10-minute songs can be summed up quickly too. So, yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that there. Um, yeah, just once again, a well done track. Looking forward to checking out more from Call It Tragedy, and honestly, I'm surprised I haven't checked out more of them yet. Maybe I tried to. I can't remember if they have an album out yet or not. It might just be a series of singles. I don't know. I'm not going to do it on camera because it doesn't do anything to add to the video. Let's wrap this up. Those are my thoughts on Call It Tragedy's Heart of Stone featuring Urs Wagner. Let me know what you thought of this one. Put your thoughts, opinions, ideas, perspectives in the description above. You guys can't edit the description. Put it in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, normally I'd put my links, but as usual with creator requests, we're going to put Call It Tragedies links, streaming platforms, social media, websites, merch, anything I can find. I'll put it down there, help you guys find out how to reach out to them or find their music. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Also, while you're on their social medias or whatever, make sure you like, subscribe, ring their bell, heart, favorite, whatever it is. Show them some love from Critical Reactions. That wraps it up for this one. We have one more creator request coming out once again from somebody we've done on the channel before. Interesting theme today. Did not plan that. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.